Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about Rogue One, Jyn Erso, specifically the character Jyn Erso, played by Felicity Jones, and there will be spoilers all over this. So I thought Jyn Erso was a very, very interesting character. One of the things, she's very different than anyone else in Rogue One, in that we get to know more about her backstory than anyone else in Rogue One. She's also really critical to the story because of who she is. So let's talk about that. So we start the film with Jyn Erso, seeing Jyn Erso, and Jyn Erso is she's on a planet with her father, Galen Erso, and her mother. Okay, and her father, Galen Erso, has left work with the Empire, and he has tried to build a life as a farmer, right? So now they make it clear in the film that Jyn has seen both sides. She's seen her father in exile, not really exile. She's seen her father hidden as kind of a trying to hide away from the Empire, but she's also seen her father when he was working for the Empire with Orson Krennic. Okay, so it's always been a situation where Galen was doing work for Orson. Orson Krennic is referred to in the movie as a director. So Orson Krennic comes to the planet where Galen Erso is hiding, and he is then he then forcibly tries to take the entire family. Tries to take Jyn, tries to take Jyn's mother, and tries to take Galen Erso. Okay, Jyn. So one of the things we see right out of the gate is that Jyn has a very obstinate personality. She does not like to be pushed around, and so we see right out of the gate that while her father is a brilliant scientist, her mother is really fiery. Right. So the first thing we see her mother, one of the first things we see her mother do is pull a gun on Orson Krennic. And I've seen the film 3 times to this point. And one of the things, and it took me a little while, one of the things that is really a big deal in Star Wars right now is who shot first. I think, because of the whole question about Han shooting Greedo, who shot first is a very, very big deal. And so I had to watch it 3 times to realize who shot first between Jyn Erso's mother and Orson Krennic. But if you watch very, very carefully, Orson Krennic does order his death troopers to shoot Jyn Erso's mother, because Jyn Erso's mother would not put down the blaster. So right from the gate, we get that Jyn comes from brilliance, and Jyn comes from, I would even say, rebellion, right? Which is very interesting, because when we meet Jyn Erso, we'll get into it. Like, she has a really detailed story. So at that point, Galen Erso is taken with the Empire, but Galen Erso and Jyn Erso's mother are both allied with Saw Gerrera. Saw Gerrera is a veteran of the Clone Wars, and so at that point, Saw Gerrera he actually comes and gets Jyn Erso from the hiding spot that she runs to when Orson Krennic comes to take the whole family. So Jyn Erso escapes from Orson Krennic, Galen Erso is taken by Orson Krennic, and Jyn Erso's mother is killed by Orson Krennic. So as you can see, Orson Krennic is he's absolutely the most villainous figure to this family, right? So at that point, Galen Erso goes off. He actually builds the Death Star, but he also builds a trap into the Death Star, right? So one of the things that's really interesting is Galen Erso is a really fascinating figure from the perspective that he fixes what many people believe to be a flaw in Episode 4, which was why was the Death Star so easily destroyed. I think Galen Erso is brilliantly written, and it perfectly makes sense, because I think when you have a situation where you have, you know, a group like the Empire who is really pushing people, treating people in a way that's not really humane, you're going to get rebellion exactly the way they did. And so and Galen Erso is a very strange type of rebel. He is a rebel from the very, very inside, although it could really be argued that he's not a rebel at all, and that his plan was so dangerous, and that there were so many obstacles to it being coming true, that really, you know, what he did was just give up. So Galen Erso, Jyn Erso's father, is a really problematic person. So then we see Saw Gerrera comes for Jyn Erso. He takes Jyn Erso, and then we learn later from Jyn Erso herself and from Saw Gerrera that Saw Gerrera then trains Jyn Erso. And throughout the rest of the film, we see Jyn Erso using Saw Gerrera's training expertly. So she is a very, very skilled fighter. She's a very skilled warrior, and we see that throughout the film. So that is something that's there. Excuse me, I'm just wetting my whistle there. All right, so one of the things that's really interesting about Jyn Erso, as we move forward, is we see her on Jedha. So actually, Jyn Erso is then sought out by the rebellion. They seek to find her, to use her as a key to two things. They want to use her as a key to get access to Saw Gerrera, but even Saw Gerrera is only like essentially like a point of contact to get to Galen Erso. And at this point, the rebellion really wants to kill Galen Erso for his work in creating the Death Star. And so the rebellion is really, it's nascent. The rebellion is nascent at this point, and so we really see Jyn Erso, or actually Galen Erso, in this position where the rebellion is seeking to kill him, right? So they want contact with Saw Gerrera, they want contact with Jyn Erso, and the rebellion wants all of these things in order to kill Galen Erso. Now this is really challenging, because we're being shown the rebellion in some of its darkest moments, where it's making some of its most difficult decisions, right? Now, I don't have too much issue with any of that, because Galen Erso is an Imperial officer, period. No, you know, nobody knows at this point that he's a double agent, right? So Jyn Erso, so at this point, the rebellion actually they actually free Jyn Erso, who is in the custody of the Empire. By the way, I do think this was a little bit of a hole in the plot. We're told that Jyn Erso is two things, like that she's, super antagonistic, so much so that the Empire has taken her hostage, but at the same time she's not a rebel. That I had a challenging time with. I think there was, I know there were changes in the film, and I think that this detail might have gotten pinched. It's hard for me to understand how Jyn Erso is as neutral about the Empire as she is, and then at the same time she's taken captured by the Empire. Problem with the script, not really with the character, but it was a little bit of a problem. So at this point, the rebellion frees Jyn Erso from the they free Jyn Erso from this Imperial transport, right? K2SO makes sure that, and as soon as Jyn Erso is freed, she immediately not only knocks down all the Imperials around her, but knocks down all the rebel forces around her who are trying to, air quotes, rescue her. Now, this also really solidifies that not only is she an incredibly dangerous warrior, she's very intelligent, just like her father. Because, when I saw this, I was like, why is she being so obstinate? These people are trying to help her. But the reality is she was 100% right. The rebellion is not trying to help Jyn Erso. They're trying to use Jyn Erso as a tool, right? So that's very, very interesting perspective, you know what I mean? And she has a really fascinating beginning of the story. And one of the things I did think that was really interesting about Jyn Erso was just that we got to see more about Jyn Erso's background than any other character in the film, right? So one of the things then happens is Jyn Erso is sent to Jedha with Cassian Andor, and the whole point of them is to link up with Saw Gerrera. And the point from there is to find Galen Erso, Jyn Erso's father. Jyn Erso, all along, has ideas that the rebellion don't have her best interest in mind. And so she's being very problematic for them, right? And so, now one of the things I think was really interesting is there are moments in Jyn Erso, what we're shown of Jyn Erso, that really redeem her character from being someone who is very uncaring. Because there are some aspects that are shown of Jyn Erso that, there's a point where she says, the Empire doesn't bother me. It's not an issue if you don't look up, right? And that's hard for any Star Wars fan to watch, who is really rooting for the rebellion, because you're like, well, why isn't she helping, right? But one of the things that happens right out of the gate is on Jedha, there is a fight that breaks out between the rebels on Jedha, who are trying to stop the Empire from getting the Kyber crystals, to using the Kyber crystals in the Death Star to power their death machine, which is used to destroy planets. Then what they're going to do is they're going, and so there's a big old fight that breaks out with the rebellion. And in that fight, what happens is there is a child who's in danger. And so this child is actually, right in the middle of the road. There's explosions going everywhere. Jyn sees this and does not hesitate. She bolts right out into the middle of a huge firefight with explosions all around and saves the child, and then immediately returns the child to the child's mother. And so I thought this was a really interesting aspect of Jyn Erso. And we're shown right out of the gate that Jyn Erso is really at heart a hero, right? And that she's willing to sacrifice herself for people who need help and who are in danger. And that is an aspect that is absolutely critical to the rebellion. Then later, as we go forward, she continues to help the rebellion in different ways. So Jyn Erso was a really, really interesting character. And also I very much enjoyed just being able to understand how she got her training through Saw Gerrera, and also seeing, a woman handle being in an incredibly difficult situation where, the Empire is looking for her, trying to imprison her. The rebellion is trying to use her as a tool, not really trying to help her in any way, just use her for her own ends, and to see ways she had to walk through all these different trials. Very, very interesting character, Jyn Erso. Take care, everybody.